kind of stance I would use for a realistic situation. So starting with the Wing Chun stance, right? So obviously we're standing, or with the Silum Tao stance. So we're standing with this triangulation. We have our knees pointing in. This is to really promote and cultivate that idea of triangulation, that idea of center line. Meaning, so center line is not just about an imaginary line running down the center of body, this linear line. Center line, if you think about it in this way, where you have a pyramid, this being the base of the pyramid, and we have the sides of the pyramid going to the apex of the pyramid. Think about it like this, like it's cultivating something like that. So then from the center of the base to the apex of the pyramid, that becomes your center line. So again, it's not this linear line where, you know, where it's sort of like this, where, if you're standing here, where if I'm just thinking about this, you know, which is what a lot of people think it is, you know, like this, where their shoulders are tight, elbows coming in. Yes, that is moving in a straight line, but because it's linear, it will have so much leverage for him to just push out of the way, or, you know, press down or something like that. So we want to cultivate this idea of a pyramid, so that yes, the fist or the hand or the wrist does move along the center line. However, it's backed up by the energy or the activation of the whole body. Okay, so then rather than something like this, you know, it will be something like that. So the power of the body can start to be backing it up. Now, that's for cultivating, so Silum Tao's for cultivating that. Hence why we stand like this. And hence why we have the fisted hand like that, so that you can see here, everything is pointing and converging. The analogy I use is like a magnifying glass. The way the magnifying glass catches the rays of the sun and then focus it, if you can angle it right, focus it to one point. That's the same thing we're trying to do. We're trying to feel the energy, the feeling of the whole body, and use our intention to focus it or triangulate it all into one point. Okay? So that, as I explained there, in my mind, when I'm, let's say, doing the Silum Tao, I don't feel like as I go further out, there's more leverage to be used against me. I feel like it's almost like it's got this scaffolding, again, like that magnifying glass. There's all these rays of the sun. It's not just one linear line to that point. The whole thing has the rays of the sun, you know, bit by bit, bit by bit. It's the same thing here, where it almost feels like there's a scaffolding, this whole space, there's something here, some intention here. Not chi or anything like that, it's just your intention. You can start to cultivate that intention. And that intention becomes tangible. I don't know how it works, but that tangible feeling enables you to have that sort of strong triangular structure. So you tap into that geometrical benefit of that structure. And that is the real idea of centerline, and that's why we stand like this. So then, as a practice, you know, again, it's a cultivating thing. That doesn't mean that out there you're going to stand like this, you know, and fight like this. No, it's a cultivating thing. So the stance I like to use for sparring, for if I'm on the street, I mean, you can't really, you know, you might be, I mean, you should be ready, but sometimes you're not ready. Sometimes you're just standing normally, and if you widen your stance, the person might know that you're ready to go, you know. So Master Choi, he said he would just used to stand casually like this in the challenge fights. He'd put his hand up like that, and then he'd just sort of come forward like this until he's in range, and then he would hit, you know. Personally, I'm not that confident. Personally, I like to have one leg in front. If I can choose, if I'm ready, I'll have to like one leg in front, almost like I'm standing. If you imagine a square on the floor, the feet are in the opposite edges of a square. So either like this or either like that. So it's a very active base, and it can take force from, like, you're agile in every direction, you're mobile in every direction, and also you can take force from the different directions, right? So let's say if it's a more boxing stance from here I don't feel like I can use my legs very well, and that's why again, this is all my opinion and my feeling that I'm sharing. That's why I don't do what sometimes, you know, some people use the Chum Q stance, which is like this. I don't personally like that. I don't feel agile, you know, sort of like pushing like this. Yes, it's strong. First, I don't feel agile, and it's strong in one direction. So let's say strong in this direction if he pushes on me, right? Because, you know, everything's aligned here, but it'd be weak against if he pushes to the side, force coming from the side, you know? The Wing Chun stance, I mean, done right, you know, you can absorb force from any direction, regardless of the shape of your stance. But still, no matter what, the shape of the stance does matter according to how much force you can take. The Wing Chun stance will be strong against that way, force from the side, but weaker against force coming from the front. Okay, so that's why I like to use this kind of stance, so it's strong in sideways and front ways. Once you can have cultivated this stance, then that idea, that as I said, it becomes a tangible feeling, that idea can then be applied and used regardless of the shape of the stance. So it's like the training wheels on a bike, right? First you need the training wheels to get the idea of, okay, upright balance on the bike. Later on you take the training wheels away, you don't need the training wheels. That's how I see this stance. So this is for cultivation of that. Later on, you can stand in these ways and you'll be able to triangulate the force in the same way. So, any questions with the stance from your side? He's a boxer, so his idea of boxing, I mean, for me as well, I want to, sorry to interrupt, but for me as well, I want to not just be able to feel agile, but I want to be able to, you know, against, let's say, takedowns, you can sprawl really fast. I don't feel like I can sprawl as easy like this compared to if I have a wider base like that. And I want to always feel like I can kick with either leg at any time. That's why the issue with this, yes, you can still kick with the back leg, but I mean, there's more energy required to move your center to kick with the back leg compared to if it was sort of like this. It's just a little bit easier. That is, you've got to keep doing it, keep it simple, keep doing it until a tangible feeling starts to come out. In the beginning, you know, and it's not this kind of clamping your knees in, you know, squeezing in and squeezing in like this. It's not that. The cultivation is really, it's a springiness, it's a lightness. You're trying to create a, you know, the stance feels like it's very buoyant against incoming force. It's very springy and buoyant, almost acting like, really the feeling for me is almost it acts like a funnel. You know, so as the force comes in, like what you were doing there, as you're, let's say, even pressing to the side, if you're standing there, so it's clear. Yeah, as you're pressing to the side, if I'm going like this, so even if I try to squeeze my knees in, you know, like that, it won't work. Whereas if I can get that buoyancy feeling, it feels like force, see, if you watch his body, force can start to enter. Even as he pulls to the side, force can start to enter forward. So therefore, if I step forward, you can start to give this kind of triangulation type of force there. It becomes tangible. You know, you've got to keep doing it until it becomes tangible. You know what I mean? So the message here is, don't spar like this. Now, it might sound contradicting because in the online school and in the students here, in the beginning, let's say when they are doing punching, just static punching, even kicking, we do ask them to do it within this stance. But again, that's to be able to feel that as they're punching, you know, keep the guard up here, of course, to protect themselves, but also to be able to keep it active so they can feel this side, you know, if I'm punching with this side, almost in my mind, I'm doing this. This side's still active. Not that I'm going sort of, this is just there covering and it's only one-sided like that. No, both sides are active even though one side's moving. So that's why we say, okay, when you're punching here, even in Chisao in the beginning, to start off like this so you can cultivate that. Later on, like for the seniors here, I'm actually asking them not to stand like this. I'm asking them to stand sort of casually like this. Can you get the same stability? Can you get the same triangulation and focus your force out from a stance like this? Can you do that on one leg? Can you do that standing like this, you know? But eventually on the street, definitely on the street, so when you're, or even in sparring, as soon as the student here is at a sparring level, we don't ask them to stand like this, we ask them to stand like this, okay? Or stand, and you know, you can't, as you're moving, you don't want to land into, so let's say as you're sparring, as you're moving, as I move like that, I don't want to land into here. As I'm moving, I'm landing into there. So, you know, so as he comes forward, I can move back, I can move forward, so it's buoyant, it's bouncy, you can sprawl if you need to. Look for mobility. That's very, very, very important thing. Even in the Wing Chun stance, even when you're triangulating, here you should still feel mobile. You know, even as you're standing like this, as you're doing Tan Sao, ask yourself, and that's how you know. So you said, how do I know? I mean, again, it becomes tangible, that triangulation, but in terms of checkpoints, signposts, you should feel stable, but very mobile. So even with your toes pointing in, You still feel like as you're doing it, you can still kick, you know, with either leg, rather than feeling like this. Yeah, I can still kick, but you see the amount of change I had to do to my body rather than staying with the center here and kicking and coming straight back to the center, you know? So mobility is a massive, massive, massive thing where people that work on rooting or stability should never, they have to come together. You can't decrease mobility to have stability. And that's why this, you know, the idea of a good stance, good footwork, all of that is about that. It's about being stable so you can defend, attack, but being mobile, being agile, not only to be able to move in any which direction in a fast way, but to be able to kick with either leg, knee with either leg, to sprawl at any time. You know, this is the concept of the triangulation that that the Silum Tau form and the Wing Chun stance gives us. This is for cultivation. This is for me personally. I find this to be the most stable way of movement for application. But ultimately, it's about once you've learned how to triangulate, focus your whole body's force into the center line, everything's ready to go. You find your center of mass, or you learn how to use and move your center of mass behind this triangulation, then the shapes don't matter. With the guard as well. So people like to do this, nothing wrong with that. This, nothing wrong with this. Again, sharing my opinion, personally, I like to keep my guards like this. So with the heels of the palms facing out. With rather than the wrist on center line, I like to keep my thumbs on the center line. Because keeping the thumbs on the center line, if you try with a partner, you'll see your center line is still covered, you know, but keep the hands relaxed, and so don't keep the fingers open because they'll get broken. So we don't want our thumbs sticking out like this. You know, it's got to be like that. You want everything bunched up together nicely like that, but very relaxed. And the heels of the palm are focusing towards me. So as you see, his thumbs are on center now. There's no way I can get through the center unless I sort of make him go out, let him open his center, and then I get in. But thumbs on center, if you try with a partner, you'll see that center's covered. It doesn't have to be wrist on center when you go like this. Also, it just looks a bit more defensive realistically, right? So, you know, you can say, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't want any trouble, please. You know, it looks defensive for the cameras, for the on-watchers, and especially most importantly, for the attacker, for the person, you know? So you want that element of surprise because 90% of the time, in my opinion, in my experience, if whoever hits first connects properly, the first hit usually wins the fight. So that's what you want to go for. So you want that element of surprise, like keep your hands up, like look very, you know, defensive, and like you don't know what's going on, you're worried a little bit like this, compared to if you're like that or like this, well, the person knows you're ready. Here, you're just as ready, and it looks defensive. And personally, I like to, without gloves, without having the hands taped up, I like to use palms rather than knuckles, just because less chance of getting, and you can see here the teeth marks there, less chance of getting, you know, I don't like, you know, you hit someone's teeth accidentally, you get cut open, you got the saliva in on your cut. I don't like that stuff. And also, yeah, even Mike Tyson broke his hand punching someone with bare knuckle, right? Whereas with the palm, less chance of blood, you know, saliva on your blood, and less chance of hurting your hands, okay? So this is the guard, this is the stance. You can alter as you go. Last thing I'll give is as you move around, try never to cross your, like, let's call this the wide base. Let's say for me, my comfort zone is as wide as my shoulders, somewhere like this, okay? Like that. Now as I want to move, if I want to move this way, I'll move this first, and I go like that. So it'll be like this. If I want to move that way, it'll be like this. Never do something like that, you know, because again, at that point, your legs are bunched up, easy to take down, less mobile, less stable. And yes, we say in this internal method, even on one leg, you can be extremely, you know, stand, if you hold yourself strong, yeah, hold yourself solid, hold solid, yeah. So it's very, very solid like that, right? But we'll say hold yourself solid. We're saying this method, even on one leg, you know, you can see I didn't lean back, but I could somehow get power from and take his balance without this happening, right? Without that happening. So we can't get that stability because we're using our center rather than using force from the ground in that traditional way or in that conventional way. However, still, you know, physics still applies, geometry still applies, stability still applies. No matter who you are, you can't say that you're exactly as stable in all directions on one leg as you are like this, right? So still, it matters. We're still dealing with gravity. We're still dealing with forces and all that kind of stuff. So for that reason, just never get your stance, narrow your stance less than your shoulders. This is my opinion. Okay, so moving this way, moving back, moving forward. It's okay to be wider momentarily and come back to here rather than be narrow and then go back to shoulder width. Any questions with that? No? Oh, good. Have a play.